Hey guys, it's Minty here, and today we are exploring my love for movie soundtracks on vinyl records. As you can see, I've got a lot of vinyl records here. We've got a lot to get through today. We're going to have an absolute ball. Now, when it comes to my vinyl soundtrack collections, I believe there is two categories that I like to put them in. There's vintage, which are records that are like really old from when they were released in the 70s and 80s, and then there's re-releases that are modernised packaged ones that have been released recently. I think I do get more joy out of the older vintage ones because it kind of is more of a time capsule of the era in which it came from, and there's just something quite special about it. So, let's get to work. First up, we got Ghostbusters. Oh yeah, when there's something strange in the neighborhood, put this vinyl soundtrack on and you're going to have a great time. I don't know if you can see, but we got some pictures there in the back. There's some few interesting things about this. Number one is, do you remember in Ghostbusters, in the scene where all the ghosts are roaming the city and there's that song that goes, I believe it's magic, and it sounds really trippy and surreal. It's like, it is literally one of my favourite songs in the movie. Once again, I love how dreamlike and strange the song sounds. Well, in this version, it's a lovey-dovey version, and I don't know why. It's nowhere near as good as the one from the movie. I don't know why they switch that version with this more romantic one. Another interesting thing about it is, like, it has the song Ghostbusters, the Ray Parker Jr. song, but the actual song that's listed as the Ghostbusters theme is that, do you remember in Ghostbusters there was that piano music that went do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do-do-do? I think that was actually meant to be the Ghostbusters theme, whereas the Ray Parker Jr. song was just meant to be a song to promote the movie. And that's something I kind of discovered with this record. The actual Ghostbusters theme was that piano song, but I think the Ray Parker Jr. song was so awesome and so iconic, it kind of took over. Because just imagine, you know, when they made the real Ghostbusters cartoon, if they started that off with anyway, yep, it's a really good collector's piece for all people who love Ghostbusters and vinyl records. Next we have Flash. I get a lot of joy out of this record. It's a guilty pleasure. And if you turn to the back, we've got Flash Jump, where he jumps at the end and it freeze frames him. One nitpick I have with this is that usually when I listen to a record, a musical one, I kind of generally just want to hear the songs. Like, I assume that I'll just be hearing all the music material made for the movie. But instead, a lot of it is actually dialogue from the film. It's almost like it's the entire movie, only in audible form. I don't mind putting a few words and sentences from the movie here and there, but I feel like it does get in the way, because once again, I just want to hear the music. But it's a minor nitpick. Here we have Raiders of the Lost Ark. This is still in really good condition. I got it from a pawn shop. Here's the back of it. How could you go wrong with the Raiders of the Lost Ark March? Really like the cover artwork here as well. Now, this is an interesting and rare one. It's a single for when Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome came out. It's Tina Turner's We Don't Need Another Hero. So once again, it's not an entire soundtrack, just the one single. And I don't know if you can see, but it's in really bad condition. Look, like that's completely torn up there. I basically just got it because I'm a collector and it's a novelty thing to have. But yeah, whoever had this loved it. They got a lot of use out of it. It's not in the best of conditions. The record itself looks okay, but my god, if you're handling this, you want to be careful. The cover is falling apart. Shaft, one of my favourite movie soundtrack songs ever. Love it. As a matter of fact, when I got this, I was so happy and proud that I got this. I took a picture of it and posted it on the Minty Comedic Arts Facebook page and posted it up there, and it actually motivated someone to actually go and buy this soundtrack on vinyl themselves. They were like, oh yeah, you know, it sparked something in their head, and they went and looked for it and got it. So I'm glad that I could help with that. See the back there. Easy Rider. Once again, really old one, and this is actually in fairly mint condition. Looks pretty good. Once again, turn around, you got some shots from the back with a very young Jack Nicholson there. King Kong, a soundtrack that came out for, I think it was the 1976 version. Really love the artwork on here. It just makes it feel vintage. It's in moderately okay condition. Movie soundtrack by John Barry, best known for doing the James Bond movie themes. I really like the back here, where we've got King Kong grabbing Jessica Lange there. Great. Wouldn't want it any other way. Top Gun. This one's actually been re-released and it's selling at a lot of my local shops that I get my records from. It basically hasn't really changed. This is a 1986 release, but once again, it's in pretty good condition here. I actually showed this in my Top Gun video. I actually show a lot of my records in my videos. Sneak them in here and there where I can. That's Blood. Oh, I love this. Love it. It was worth getting just for this cover because I love the artwork for First Blood. Once again, I guess the idea of a lot of these records was selling the movie, so they did a lot of screenshots from the movie itself. Once again, as a way of selling it. Now, these three I had previously mentioned in the Star Wars episode, so I won't go into them too much. So we got this one, which is a choir doing the Star Wars music, and we got the Disco Star Wars, and we got Disco Superman. Because once again, in 1978, when Superman came out, it was huge, and anything that was really popular in the late 70s got a disco version. So, unfortunately, it's got some mold growing in there, but once again, I've already spoken about those records. Here we go, Grease is the word, and my word, this record is heavy. And look, they went all out. Here with this one. Got it decorated on the inside and on the back. And I think that this is somewhere where I think CD excelled, because there is 2 records in here, and each time one side finishes, if you want to continue your listening, you've got to go and turn it over, which means you've got to get up about 4 times to hear the whole soundtrack. So I think that that is somewhere where CD really caught on, but I don't care. There's something really great and grand about records. And here we have another Travolta, Saturday Night Fever. What can I say? It's Saturday Night Fever. Although I do want to get the Sesame Street version, Sesame Street Fever. The Blues Brothers. Once again, if you're a fan, you've got to have the soundtrack. It's just a must. This is interesting. It's got the other band members who aren't Jake and Elwood. There's none of the other famous cast members like Ray Charles there. Just the rest of the band. That's an interesting touch. Now this is where things get a little bizarre. Here we have Fawlty Towers, and no, this isn't the music from the show. This is actually 2 episodes. It's Mrs. Richards, the Deaf Lady, and the Hotel Inspectors, because back in the 70s, they didn't have home media. They didn't have your DVDs or your VHSs. So if you wanted to own an episode and relive it, the only thing you could do was get this record. So it's the complete audio of the episode. And that was the only way you could actually own it. So this, in a way, this is kind of like a form of home video, only it's home video audio, I guess. So I just thought that's an interesting addition. This is really bizarre. I believe my ex-girlfriend got me this. It's a Wizard of Oz, but the cover artwork is just weird. It's blue, and you would think they would have the poster from the movie or some kind of magical artwork, because isn't the Wizard of Oz meant to be magical? It doesn't look like an official release to me. Nothing about this looks official. They've got like they got a screenshot from the movie, dyed it blue for some reason, and look, it's really, I actually haven't listened to it, but it's worth having just for the obscurity of it. But that's not the most obscure one. Here we have The Godfather, and once again, there's just something about it that just doesn't look official. It says that it's by the orchestra that did the movie, so maybe it was, because maybe it's just, the fact that if it was done these days, you wouldn't have this kind of artwork, I'm guessing. But once again, I wonder if this is some kind of bootleg. Speaking of singles, here we have the Prince Back Dance, that song that everyone seems to love. And 200 Balloons. I'm guessing that's the song that was played when the Joker was killing everyone. And if that's not the song, I know that I'm probably going to get 200 comments telling me that it's not. So I'll be looking forward to that. Now this is a brilliant soundtrack. 2001: A Space Odyssey. Just as surreal and as strange as the movie itself. It's the kind of thing, if I want to just chill out, I just sit back and just let it play and just get engulfed in the master and the majesty of this brilliant, glorious sound. Okay, I went a little bit overboard with describing that. This is a really weird one. It's kind of like a John Williams best of kind of thing. As you can see here, we've got E.T., Raiders of the Lost Ark, and some other songs that he supposedly composed, like Wizard of Oz and Chariots of Fire, New York, New York. See the back here. This, to me, I'm guessing would be really, really rare. And I like how you got E.T. and what I'm guessing is Elliot eating popcorn. I've never ever seen it anywhere or heard of it, so yeah, I'm glad I've got this in my collection. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I kind of feel similar to this than I do with the 2001 A Space Odyssey one. It's more of a wonderful, enlightening musical experience. Once again, John Williams, because hey, John Williams is the man. The Hair soundtrack, really love how trippy it looks on the cover. Here we have the Pink Panther. Here we have one for the James Bond spoof, Casino Royale. This came out in 1967, and once again it was a spoof, and I really like the art cover, and I don't like the film, but I got this as a collector's piece because I can't imagine that this would be common. It hasn't been reprinted as far as I know, so yeah, I pretty much got it just as a collector's piece. But with Bond, this is where things get really interesting. Because here we have this Bond soundtrack. It was released during the Roger Moore era. That's why we've got this almost Roger Moore Bond here. It's the Bond themes that go all the way to For Your Eyes Only because it was made in 1982. But something that really, really fascinates me about this record is the executive... You won't be able to see it, but I'm going to point anyway. The executive producer for this album was Kevin McClory, who the next year would go on to make the unofficial James Bond movie, Never Say Never Again. And throughout the later part of his life, he was in an ongoing battle with the official James Bond producers of Ian Productions. So I find that very, very interesting that he was the producer of that album. It's like he was clinging on to Bond for dear life and was trying to make some kind of market out of it. Here we have Jaws 2. Once again, I mentioned this in a Jaws video. Notice how the girl Tina is helping Eddie here? Yeah, that doesn't happen in the film. She just sits there and just watches him suffer and die. I really appreciate how the artist at least trying to make it look like she was helping him rather than just staring like an idiot. And of course, my favourite of the vintage ones, the Jaws one. Look at that. This one is so old that when it came out, it obviously came out because it's the movie soundtrack, so it was because of the film, but Jaws was so brand new, it had to remind that it's also based on the best-selling book, like this is the soundtrack for the book. Because Jaws was not as much of a thing then that it is now, because now we think of it, we think of the film, but back then, I suppose the most thing that people knew about it was the book. Got this little collage of pictures here and some Jaws teeth. And it just so happens that I also have it in a modernised version. And I guess that this is the interesting thing, because this has been beautifully packaged up with very interesting artwork. So this is the struggle. Which one is the better? The older vintage crinkled up one or the newer one? I like this one because, like I said, to me it captures the era in which it came from. And the little creases and crinkles to me gives it character, and it just adds to the nostalgia effect. But still, this is a really cool soundtrack to have. It's part of a series in which they've re-released a bunch of horror soundtracks, which I'm going to go through now. Because here we also have Chud, The Howling, Darkman. See that? Got some awesome artwork on the back there. A combination of House 1 and House 2. And if you turn the back here, you got this really cool illustration of Cowboy. Salem's Lot. I'm really, really glad I got this. It's such a random thing to have the Salem's Lot soundtrack on vinyl record. Love it. This one's for Scream 2. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of Scream 2. I'm more into Scream 1, but I just got it because I just love the artwork and, you know, just look great on display. Love, love, love that artwork. Love how his mouth turns into a phone. Here we have The Exorcist. For anyone who just can't get enough of The Exorcist's creepy jingle. Although I'm kind of bummed out that on the cover they didn't have the traditional image of the priest walking in the fog entering the apartment. But it's still creepy, still very, very eerie. Nothing really is going on in the back here. Here we have Christine. Now, this isn't the soundtrack as in the songs that were used for the movie. This is the soundtrack as in, this is the music that John Carpenter composed for the movie. I really like that cover. It's got the V with dripping blood. But if you look at the record itself, I love this. I've never seen a record like this before. Here, I'm guessing this is meant to be an I. And here you've got the Christine speedometer. Really like it. But this company that has released all the soundtracks for these horror films have also done Back to the Future. Now, this is a series of records. This is Back to the Future Part 2, which is actually my favourite in the film series. Please don't get offended if you like the first one better, like most people do. But the cover here is a bit... yeah... the colours don't exactly grab me. The Back to the Future logo just sort of blends in, and to me, you've got to kind of look a little bit close to see what exactly is happening, and, you know, even the back isn't dreadfully exciting. The best thing about the cover, the artwork, is I do like this. You got this hill valley and the DeLorean flying there. Music-wise, brilliant. Love the soundtrack. Love it. The Alan Silvestri soundtrack is nothing short of a masterpiece. The only gripe that I guess I have with the music is, do you remember in Back to the Future 2, there's this musical note that goes dun dun dun. Whenever something suspicious is happening or about to happen, the music goes dun 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 dun. That is on this a lot. I mean, it's not just on here once or twice, it is absolutely littered throughout the soundtrack. So if you listen to this, by the end, you're going to be humming dun 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 dun. Here we have Spawn. Haven't opened this because I really like it in its plastic. You probably noticed that with a lot of these newer ones, they're still in the plastic. It's because I don't really want to get them out. I know I should because I actually want to listen to them. But I just feel like when you remove them from the plastic and you break the seal, it's like you've taken something special away from it, and it's not quite as magical or as special anymore. Whereas if it's all still sealed up, it's like it's maintaining this wonderful freshness. I'm weird, but yeah, a lot of them, especially these newer ones, are still in their plastic. Nothing's really happening there, but I do love this. Surprisingly, very, very heavy record. And no, this isn't the musical score. This is actually the songs that were used in the movie, which is pretty cool because even though it might not have been the best film, it did have some good music. Here we have The Lost Boys, and wow, talk about a boring cover for what could have actually potentially been a great cover. I mean, look at the poster. The poster is a work of art. It's brilliant, and this is just... But I will say this. Check out the record. It's white. Yeah, I don't really quite know what to make of this. White records are not very common, are they? Here we have Pulp Fiction. This is a really great soundtrack. And I mentioned with the Flash Gordon one, they put so much dialogue from the movie in there. They do that with here, but it's just the right amount to sort of celebrate the music that's in the movie, but also sort of capture the mood of the movie. And it's done just right, whereas I think it's sort of done with overabundance with Flash Gordon. Really, really retro groovy background here. Here we have the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Love how it uses different artwork that was used on any of the movie's posters. But I actually really like it. I like how it's paying tribute to 1950s B movies. So that's all fun and great. Back here. Really great soundtrack. And of course, we've got Labyrinth! This soundtrack is great and it's still in its plastic. And I have had to really restrain myself so many times because so many times I've wanted to just rip out the plastic and just play this beast. I mean, come on! How could you go wrong with Magic Dance? But yes, I've restrained myself. It has not been taken out of its seal. I might just get another one and just listen to that. Love the back as well. This really weird bohemian artwork that I've never seen anywhere else. It almost makes the record itself that little bit more unique. But yeah, really glad I got this in my collection. Boogie Nights. Once again, like Pulp Fiction, it uses some sound bites from the movie but doesn't go overboard like they did with Flash Gordon. One thing I really find amusing about this soundtrack is that it actually features Mark Wahlberg singing "You've Got the Power." Remember when he tries to sing and it sounds really awful? I just find it very amusing that that was put in the soundtrack. Why not? The Goonies. Are the Goonies good enough? Is the soundtrack good enough? I don't know. Once again, I haven't taken it out of its plastic. But I do know the songs that are on the soundtrack and I do love them, so yes. My guess is the soundtrack is good enough. And once again, this is pretty much a reprint of how it would have looked in 1985. And you go to the back and it's pretty much just showing you all the musical talent that's on here. Sort of like it's advertising the actual soundtrack as opposed to the movie, which is cool. It's interesting. Once again, I'm guessing it's coming from a day and age and perspective when the Goonies wasn't quite a thing yet. Because if they redesigned it, it would just be full of still shots from the movie. So, yeah. Guardians of the Galaxy. This album is something special, I tell you. I love the music on here. It's got both the songs that were used in the movie, but also the movie soundtrack as well. How could you go wrong with a record that starts off with Ooga Chaka? And you open it up. Here you go. Now we're getting into the Bond records, and we've got Thunderball, a re-release of how it would have been when it was released in 1965. Once again, hasn't been opened. Want to sort of preserve it. From Russia with Love. I love how retro and old school this is. They did like getting pictures of Sean Connery with pretty women, didn't they? That was kind of like the thing back then, wasn't it? I don't think they do that as much now. You Only Live Twice. I actually have listened to this one. I really enjoy the soundtrack. Diamonds Are Forever. Awful movie. Great music. Love the artwork. Works for me. Just a shame that the movie itself was quite rubbish. And of course, Skyfall. Once again, I wasn't actually a big fan of Skyfall. I felt like it was really overrated. I think I've grown to love it. I just generally found it a bit morbid and depressing and sometimes boring. But once again, I've grown to love it. But I do love the music in this movie. I think the music in it is brilliant. So that's why it sits proudly in my collection with my other Bonds. I actually really want to get the soundtrack for On Her Majesty's Secret Service because that is my personal favourite James Bond soundtrack. I think the music in that is just flawless. It's just the best Bond music ever. I don't know if that's going to happen because they sort of seem to be stuck in Sean Connery mode, and On Her Majesty's Secret Service is the George Lazenby Australian Bond, so I hope they do release On Her Majesty's Secret Service because I would buy the shit out of that. And of course, here we got Batman Forever. Once again, not my favourite movie, but I do enjoy the soundtrack. This is the one where they got Joel Schumacher to direct, and I think that it helped the movie being more young and hip and more appealing to the teenagers, because I think that Schumacher was quite big in the music scene. He had directed some music videos, so I'm kind of guessing that Schumacher got a lot of the musical talent on board, because there's lots of great artists on here. There's Seal, there's U2, there's Iggy Pop, there's Michael Hutchence, there's Brandy. There's so many, and there's even Offspring's on here. So I'm kind of guessing that sort of was his influence, because if you look at Batman Returns, there was no song in that. There was nothing on the charts in there. I think there was a musical version of Super Freak, but that's it. So yeah, this is a great soundtrack. I will listen to it sometime. So that was my look into movie soundtrack vinyl records. I hope you enjoyed it, and you got a unique look into my obscure love, because this is an obscure love. You don't really hear about many people collecting movie soundtrack records. I mean, yeah, people do collect records, and that's great. I love them. There's something brilliant about records. There's something kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, romantic about them. I just love them. I feel like they're a sort of lost art. Yeah, so hopefully you got a look into my weird interest, and I hope that my collection continues to grow. Join with me next week as I look into action figures. See ya!